2,000 feet below the green fields of Yorkshire, a man sat in complete darkness, unwrapped a grease-stained parcel by the light of a single lamp, and ate his dinner with hands as black as the coal around him. This was Snap. Bait. Tommy. Whatever the coalfield called it, it was the food that carried Britain's miners through 12-hour shifts in the deep. Some of it would turn your stomach today. All of it tells a story of grit and thrift. Here are 25 meals British coal miners actually ate underground before the pits closed forever. Let's begin the countdown. Number 25. The cold, boiled potato earned its place in a miner's pocket long before it ever reached his mouth. On bitter January mornings, when the cage dropped through freezing air toward the seam, a man would slip a potato boiled the night before into his jacket, using it as a hand warmer through the long descent. By snap time, cold and dense, it became food. Peeled with a coal-blackened thumbnail and eaten with a pinch of salt from a twist of paper, it filled a corner no bread could reach. In the pit villages of Durham and South Wales, nothing was wasted, and a spud that warmed your fingers at 6 could still fill your belly at noon. Miners spoke of the strange comfort of that cold, waxy flesh, eaten in the dark, a small green field carried into the black heart of the earth. Number 24. Bread and margarine was the snap of the leanest weeks, the meal a family reached for when the dripping jar ran dry before payday. Marge cost less than butter and less than lard, spread thin across doorstep slices cut from a loaf that had gone slightly stale by the time it went underground. There was no glamour in it, only survival. The miner's hands, filthy with coal dust no soap could ever fully shift, left dark fingerprints across the pale bread so that every bite carried the faint grit of the seam itself. Families joked bitterly about the coal sandwich, the taste of the pit worked into the food. Yet on a hard shift, bread and Marge still did its job, lining the stomach and holding a man upright at the face. It was thrift stripped to the bone, the plainest fuel for the hardest work in Britain. Number 23. Sardine sandwiches brought a rare, oily richness to the snap tin, tinned fish being one of the cheapest proteins a colliery family could buy. A tin of sardines cost a few pence at the co-op, and a housewife would mash the little fish, bones and all, across 2 slices with the back of a fork, pressing the oil deep into the bread. Down the pit, in the still, warm air of a working seam, the smell announced itself the moment the parcel was opened, drawing groans and grins from the men sat along the gate. Some loved it, some couldn't stomach fish in the dark. But the sardine gave a working man oil, salt, and strength, and it kept for a shift without spoiling. In coal fields far from the sea, a tin of sardines was as close as many miners ever came to a taste of the ocean above. Number 22. Pickled onions, wrapped in a scrap of greaseproof and tucked beside the bread, cut through the dust and grease of the underground like nothing else. Every colliery kitchen kept a great jar of onions pickling in malt vinegar on the pantry shelf, put down in autumn to last the winter. A miner would take 2 or 3, sharp and eye-wateringly strong, to eat alongside a lump of cheese and a hunk of bread. Down in the seam, where the mouth filled with the flat, chalky taste of coal, that vinegar bite was a jolt of pure life. Men crunched them loudly in the dark, the sound carrying along the gate, and the smell hanging in the warm air long after. Cheap, sharp, and lasting, the pickled onion was the miner's answer to a palate deadened by dust, a small explosion of flavor a mile beneath the fields. Number 21. Treacle butties turned the humblest bread into something close to a treat. Sweetness being the fastest fuel a laboring man could carry. A miner's wife would spread black treacle or golden syrup thick across a slice, fold it over, and the sugar would soak into the crumb until it near enough glued the bread together. Lyle's green and gold tin sat in most pit village pantries, the syrup so common the Ministry of Food once called it sunshine in a tin. Underground, that sugar hit the blood fast, a burst of energy for a man swinging a pick or shoveling at the face. Fingers stuck to the paper, and the sweetness lingered against the coal grit for the whole afternoon. Children begged for the same at home, but for the miner it was serious business, the quickest way to keep a body moving through hours of brutal, sweating work in the dark. Number 20. Corned beef sandwiches were the sturdy backbone of the snap tin, tinned beef shipped in from Argentina, filling British larders when fresh meat was dear. The distinctive blue-labeled tin, opened with a little key that peeled back the lid, gave dense, salty pink slabs that a housewife cut thick and laid between buttered bread with a smear of brown sauce. It held together on the long journey down the shaft, survived the heat of the seam, and gave a man real meat in his belly for the price of a few pence. Miners across the country carried it, from the Rhondda to the Nottinghamshire coalfield, trusting corned beef to do what fresh meat never could and keep for a shift without spoiling. Salty, fatty, and filling, it was the taste of empire trade turned into working-class fuel, a reliable friend at the bottom of the tin. Number 19. Condensed milk sandwiches sound like something a child would invent, yet they were serious energy for men who burned thousands of calories a shift. Sweetened condensed milk, poured thick and golden from the tin, was spread across bread until it dripped. Sugar and fat, combined in the cheapest, quickest form a pit family could manage. In houses where fresh milk was rationed and money tight, a tin of Nestle's condensed milk went a long way, sweetening tea and filling butties both. Underground, that concentrated sweetness was rocket fuel, hitting the blood and driving a tired man back to the coalface. Some miners spooned it straight from the tin at snap time, licking the sticky lid clean. It seems almost obscene to modern eyes, but for a body wrecked by hard labor in the heat and dark, condensed milk on bread was survival dressed up as a treat. Number 18. Cold sausage carried the memory of breakfast into the depths, the humblest leftover turned into midday snap. A miner's wife rose in the small hours to fry bangers for the men before the early shift, and any that survived the frying pan were wrapped and slipped into the bait box for later. Eaten cold in the seam, the fat set firm and the skin turned rubbery. But the meat was still meat, and meat was precious. Men ate them straight from the paper, or split and pressed between bread with a dab of mustard. Sausages stretched further than a proper joint, padded out by the butcher with rusk and seasoning, and cost little enough that even a colliery family could manage them once or twice a week. Cold, dense, and faintly greasy, the humble banger was a small daily comfort in a working life with precious few of them. Number 17. An apple was often the single fresh thing in a miner's whole day underground, a bright note in a world of black. A wife would tuck one into the snap tin, knowing it would survive the descent unbruised, its skin protecting it where softer fruit would spoil. Down in the seam, in air thick with dust, the crunch of an apple rang out clean and sharp, and the crisp, watery flesh cut through the grit coating a man's tongue. Windfalls from a back garden tree or an allotment cost nothing at all, and in autumn every pit village overflowed with them. Some miners ate the core and all, throwing nothing away out of lifelong habit. In the total darkness of the coalface, that one apple was a reminder of daylight, of gardens and orchards, and the green world waiting far above the pithead at the end of the shift. Number 16. Yorkshire oatcakes gave the northern coalfields a snap that travelled well and filled a hungry gap. Not the crisp Scottish kind, but soft, pliable oatmeal pancakes cooked on a griddle, hung to dry over the pulley rack until leathery, then folded around cheese or bacon for the pit. In the mill and mining towns of Yorkshire and Staffordshire, oatcakes were a daily bread all their own, cheap to make from oatmeal and water and lasting far longer than a soft loaf. A miner would roll one tight and eat it cold at the face, the earthy oats sitting heavy and satisfying in the stomach. Passed down through generations and cooked on the same well-seasoned griddle, the oatcake was thrift made delicious. Its slow disappearance from everyday tables marks how much of the old northern food culture faded when the pits that sustained it began to close. Number 15. Sugar butties stood as the starkest snap of all, the meal of the poorest weeks in the poorest homes. Bread, a thin scrape of margarine, and a sprinkle of white sugar pressed into the surface so it wouldn't tumble off, folded over and wrapped for the pit. It cost almost nothing, and it gave a man exactly one thing: energy, the pure sugar hit that a laboring body craved. In the hungry years between the wars and through the tight times of rationing, sugar butties fed pit children off to school and their fathers off to the seam alike. There was no pretending it was anything more than making do. Yet miners remembered it without shame, because it did the job when the wage ran out before the week did. A sweet, gritty, honest mouthful, the sugar butty was the taste of a working family, stretching the very last penny. Number 14. Potted meat and fish paste sandwiches packed the punch of concentrated flavor into a spreadable, long-lasting snap. Little jars of Shipham's paste, or home-potted meat sealed under a layer of clarified fat, sat in every colliery pantry, ready to be spread thin across bread for the bait box. The flavor was intense, salty, and strong, a small amount going a long way, which suited a family counting every penny. Down the pit, that concentrated savor woke up a tired appetite when plain bread would not. Beef paste, salmon paste, bloater paste, each family had its favorite, bought by the jar or made from the scraps of Sunday's joint minced fine and packed tight. It was thrift turned into taste, a way of stretching a few pennies worth of meat across a week of snap tins, carrying the memory of a proper dinner deep into the working dark. Number 13. Cold, streaky bacon proved that the fattiest, cheapest cut could be the most prized underground, where a man burned fat as fast as he could eat it. Fried at dawn alongside the miner's breakfast, extra rashers were saved back, cooled, and folded into bread for later. By snap time, the fat had set white and firm, chewy and rich. But that fat was exactly the point: dense fuel for muscles working flat out in the heat of the seam. Streaky was the poor man's bacon, more fat than lean, and cost a fraction of a proper gammon, which made it the natural choice for a pit family. Miners spoke of the deep satisfaction of cold bacon between doorstep slices, salt and grease and bread, eaten in the dark. It was humble, and it was fatty, and after 6 hours at the coalface, it tasted like the finest meal in England. Number 12. Parkin and gingerbread gave the snap tin its sweetness in a form that lasted for weeks and only improved with age. Made from oatmeal, black treacle, and ground ginger, baked dense and sticky in the ovens of Yorkshire and Lancashire, Parkin was the northern coalfield's beloved cake. A wife would bake a great tray of it, wrap it, and let it mature in the tin until the treacle turned it soft and moist, then send squares of it down the pit with her husband. The ginger warmed a man through, the treacle gave a burst of sugar, and the oats sat heavy enough to keep hunger at bay for hours. Traditionally tied to bonfire night, Parkin found its way into snap tins all year round because it simply kept so well. Sticky-fingered and sweet, it was a taste of home baking carried a mile beneath the moors. Number 11. Peas pudding. Sandwiches ran deep through the coal fields of the northeast, a snap so beloved of Durham and Northumberland pit villages it near enough defined them. Housewives boiled dried yellow split peas for hours with a ham bone until they collapsed into a smooth, golden paste seasoned with butter, salt, and pepper. Cold and set firm, spread thick between bread or stuffed into a floury, stotty cake with a slice of boiled ham, it made a bait box a man looked forward to opening. Cheap, filling, and rich in the protein that meat could not always provide, peas pudding was the working man's fuel through the long winters of the northern seams. The old rhyme, "Peas pudding hot, peas pudding cold," echoed through pit village kitchens for generations. Down the mine, cold was how it came, dense and earthy and comforting, a taste as much a part of the Northeast as the coal itself. Number 10. The Cornish pasty was engineered, almost by accident, into the perfect miner's meal, though it belonged to the tin and copper men of Cornwall rather than the coal fields. Crimped along one thick edge, that ridge of pastry became a handle, letting a miner hold his dinner in fingers filthy with rock dust and arsenic, eat the middle, and throw the crust away untouched. Inside, beef, potato, swede, and onion filled one end, while some were baked with jam or stewed apple at the other, a full dinner and pudding sealed in a single crust. It went down the shaft cold, sturdy enough to survive the journey, and needed no plate, no fork, nothing but a pair of hands. The miners called it a tiddy oggy, and its clever, self-contained design fed the men who dug Cornwall's deep mines for generations, the most ingenious packed lunch Britain ever produced. Number 9. The cold fried egg sandwich was a small luxury that made a hard shift feel almost bearable. Cooked on the same griddle as the morning bacon, the egg was slid onto bread while still warm, the yolk sometimes left soft, then wrapped and left to set on the journey down. By snap time it had firmed into something dense and rich, the yolk turned waxy, the white cold and springy between buttered slices. Eggs were not always plentiful in a colliery household, especially through rationing, so a fried egg butty in the bait box meant it had been a good week. Down the seam, a man ate it slowly, savoring the richness, the one genuinely satisfying mouthful in a day of grinding labor. Simple as it was, that cold egg sandwich carried real weight in a miner's world, proof that even a mile underground, a small comfort could still find its way to you. Number 8. Cheese and raw onion was the ploughman's lunch before anyone thought to give it a fancy name, and the coalfields swore by it. A wedge of hard cheese, a whole raw onion, and a hunk of bread. That was the whole of it, sharp and strong enough to stand up to the deadening dust of the seam. The onion, eaten in bites like an apple, brought tears to the eyes and life to the mouth, while the cheese gave lasting fat and salt. It cost little, kept well, and needed no cooking, which made it the natural snap for a family watching every penny. Miners along the gate would peel their onions in the lamplight, the smell filling the warm underground air, and eat them with a defiant relish. Plain, pungent, and honest, cheese and raw onion was the flavor of a working man's dinner, unchanged for 100 years underground. Number 7. Bread and butter, real butter, was a small daily luxury that told you a family was doing just about all right. Where poorer weeks meant marge or lard, a scrape of proper butter across doorstep slices was a quiet mark of comfort, and the miner who opened his snap to find it counted himself lucky. Cut thick from a fresh loaf, the butter softening slightly in the warm air of the seam, it was plain food at its finest, the sweet wheat of the bread and the cream of the butter needing nothing else. Some added a little sugar, some a slice of cheese, but many ate it just as it came. In a life measured out in hard shifts and tight wages, that simple pleasure carried real meaning. Bread and butter underground was the taste of a good week, a small dignity handed down the shaft in a battered tin. Number 6. Water in the Dudley bottle was the drink that kept a man alive in the killing heat of the deep seams. The Dudley, an oval metal flask with a screw stopper, curved to sit flat against the body, was as essential to a miner as his lamp. Down where the temperature climbed and the air hung thick and hot, a man sweated buckets and thirst became a genuine danger. Yet water had to be rationed carefully across a shift, each sip measured, because there was no more until he surfaced. Miners guarded their Dudleys, kept them cool where they could, and drank with discipline. Some filled them with cold tea instead, but for many it was plain water, warm and metallic by the afternoon, the most precious thing they carried. In the sweltering dark, that battered flask of water was not refreshment, but survival, the difference between finishing a shift and collapsing at the face. Number 5. Bread and lard with salt was thrift boiled down to its purest form, the snap of the very hardest times. Lard, the rendered white fat of the pig, cost even lesser than dripping and marge. And spread across bread with a good pinch of salt, it gave a man exactly what his body screamed for underground, fat and sodium to replace what the sweat poured out. It looked like nothing, pale grease on plain bread, and yet generations of miners were raised and worked on it. The salt did more than flavor, replacing what a laboring body lost by the pint in the heat of the seam. In pit villages where the pig was killed and every scrap of it used, lard was wealth of a kind, and bread and lard was the honest, unglamorous fuel that dug the coal that powered a nation, one plain, salted mouthful at a time. Number 4. A hunk of cheese and bread. Plain and simple was the miner's crib in a dozen coal fields, and in Wales it carried a special meaning. Carefully, the crumbly, salty white cheese of the South Wales valleys was known as the miner's cheese for good reason. Its high salt content replaced exactly what a man sweated out at the face, and it travelled down the pit without spoiling, sitting easy in a warm seam. A wedge of Caerphilly or Cheddar or Lancashire with a hunk of bread asked nothing of the cook and everything of the appetite, and it satisfied. Miners ate it in the lamplight, cutting slices with a pocket knife, the salt sharp on a dust-dry tongue. Cheap, lasting, and full of the salt and fat a labouring body craved. That plain lump of cheese was one of the oldest and truest meals ever carried into the British underground. Number 3. Cold tea, drunk from the snap tin lid or a bottle, was the beloved drink of the deep. Strange as it sounds to modern ears, brewed strong at home before the shift and left to go cold, often carried without milk so it wouldn't turn in the heat, it was the miner's daily companion. Down where the air was hot and thick, that cold tea slaked a thirst that plain water somehow couldn't, the tannin cutting through the coal grit on the tongue. Men grew so used to it that many came to prefer their tea cold ever after, disconcerting their wives for the rest of their lives. Sweetened with sugar for extra energy, it did double duty as fuel and refreshment both. In the darkness of the seam, a swig of cold stewed tea was a small ritual of home, carried a mile down and drunk in the black. Number 2. Bread and dripping was the archetypal miner's snap, the taste of the coal fields made solid, and few meals meant more to a pit family. The dripping, beef fat saved from Sunday's roast and set firm in a jar on the cold slab, was spread thick across bread and dusted with salt. The brown jelly at the bottom of the jar prized most of all for carrying the concentrated flavor of the meat. It cost nothing beyond the roast it came from, and it gave a working man dense, satisfying fuel that lined the stomach through the longest shift. Down the seam, that rich, salty fat on plain bread tasted like a memory of the whole family gathered round a joint they could barely afford. Bread and dripping was thrift and comfort in a single mouthful, The flavor of Sunday carried deep into the working week and into the dark. Number 1. Bread and jam, the jam butty, was the single most universal meal ever eaten underground, the snap that fed the entire British coal field. Cheap, sweet, and quick to make, it never spoiled on the journey down, gave a laboring body the fast sugar it craved, and cost so little that even the tightest family could always manage it. A miner's wife spread jam thick, folded the bread, wrapped it, and packed it in the oval snap tin curved to fit against his body, its metal keeping out the coal dust and the mice. And there, in the darkness of the seam, came the ritual that broke every heart who saw it. Fingers black with coal, no washing possible. A man would leave dark prints across the pale bread with every bite, eating the very dust he mined. The miners called it the coal sandwich and ate it without complaint. Crumbs were saved and scattered for the mice, whose sudden fleeing warned of gas or a coming fall, so that a jam butty could quite literally save a life. When the last cage rose at Kellingley Colliery in December 2015 and Britain's final deep pit fell silent, it was meals like this, jam butties eaten in the dark, that vanished with it forever. From the cold potato warming a man's frozen fingers to the humble jam butty at the very top, these 25 meals tell the story of a Britain that dug its wealth from a mile underground and fed itself on almost nothing to do it. They were the fuel of thrift and endurance, eaten in darkness by men who left their fingerprints in coal on every slice. When the pits closed, this food went with them. But for those who carried a snap tin down the shaft, the taste of it will never be forgotten.